Hello, my name is Nicholas Morgan. I'm an editor at Aval News, and this is Turkey Abroad. Joining me this morning is Ilya Kusa. He is an author and analyst of international relations with the Ukrainian Institute for the Future in Kyiv. Ilya, thank you for joining me this morning.
Hello, Nicholas. Thank you for having me.
So, I want to ask you about a topic that has personally captured my interest for some time now, and that is the relationship between Turkey and Ukraine. And I'd like to start by rewinding about a month ago, or a little over a month now, when tensions were still high in the Donbass between Ukraine and Russia. And I thought it was personally interesting because at the time, there seemed to be some side focus, at least, on Turkey's relationship with Ukraine, at least from the Russian perspective. And I can't personally recall a previous time where Russia was actively singling out Turkey among other countries who were supportive of Ukraine in previous bouts of tension. And they accused Turkey specifically of quote unquote emboldening militaristic behavior from Ukraine by providing drones, providing the growing defense relationship between the two of them. And it just stood out to me, really. And they didn't seem to take very kindly, of course, to President Zelensky visiting President Erdogan on April 10th, because shortly afterwards they enacted the ongoing tourist flight ban from Russia to Turkey, of course, saying that it had to do with the situation related to coronavirus in the country. But now that the Russian troops appear to be pulled back away from the border region and away for the moment, I'd like to ask you, what would you say were the main takeaways from the recent crisis in terms of how Russia views this relationship that has been developing between Ukraine and Turkey?
Well, first of all, first takeaway, Russia does not like what Turkey does in Ukraine. So basically, this you can see very clearly when you listen to different statements from Russian officials when they discuss relations with Turkey, and particularly Turkey-Ukraine relations. They don't like that Turkey is trying to develop military cooperation with Ukraine because they see it as a potential strategic threat in the future, especially if Turkey continues to sell their new drones to Ukraine. Although I can't say that now they are some kind of big threat to Russia. Of course not, because there are not too many of them, like in Ukraine, and
It's less
Ukraine.
than 10, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it's not enough to confront pro-Russian forces. Not even speaking about Russian regular army if they would invade one more time. So I think, but potentially, I see that Russia is irritated by this, and they see it as a potential threat. They don't want Ukraine to become another test field for Turkish armed forces, where they could, demonstrate their success by turning the table, like they did in Nagorno-Karabakh, for example, where they tested their drones and they showed the world and, of course, potential clients, like that they have this kind of weapons and arms that can benefit any country. What they actually did to Azerbaijan, they helped them modernize the army, and then Azerbaijan started the military operation in Nagorno-Karabakh in South Caucasus, and they really made progress, like for the first time in 30 years. And Russia, of course, doesn't want to do that, to see that in Ukraine. They want to dominate that particular region, and they don't want Turkey to engage too much. So they are okay, I think, with like basic military cooperation between Ukraine and Turkey, but they're not okay if that would be deep, regular, and systemic, in the future. Second takeaway, I would say that besides that, Russia does not see Turkey as its foe in Ukraine, in Donbass, like particularly. So they don't see Turkey as is their main enemy in that kind of situation. For Russia, it is still the United States as their main rival, and they see the Ukrainian government, the United States, as the main partner of the Ukrainian government in the context of Donbass, and of course France and Germany, which are our international mediators, and of course everything that goes around about Donbass. It is talked about between Russia, France, and Germany, and the United States, which are like which are standing behind the Europeans, and of course Ukraine between them. So Turkey, in my view, Turkey isn't. Russia does not see Turkey as their enemy yet.
Hmm.
Third takeaway, I would say also an interesting moment that although Moscow was dissatisfied with Vladimir Zelensky, President of Ukraine's visit to Turkey 3 weeks ago, I think, 3 weeks ago, they didn't. I don't think they really tried to punish Turkey with all these restrictions on tourists and on air flights by cutting down air communication with Ankara. So I think really the visit, although it occurred during this military and political escalation between Russia and Ukraine, actually it didn't show anything new. I mean, Turkey, the main question when the visit occurred, the main question which everyone in Ukraine particularly raised was like, will Turkey go and say something more meaningful than they usually say? So will they go and support Ukraine politically and, for example, join anti-Russian sanctions that were imposed in 2014 and 2015? No, they didn't. They didn't do that. They didn't. Erdogan, when he was on the press conference with Zelensky, didn't say anything new. He didn't go beyond what was written in his statement, and this is, pretty generic statement which they they have been making, I think, for 6-7 years already. And he also showed that his focus is not Donbass, not Russia as itself. His focus is Crimea, Crimean Tatars, and and Black Sea. So, and that's actually that's all what we heard and what we saw. And that's, I think, was the crucial moment when Russia, though they didn't like the visit, but they understood that nothing was going to happen.
Yeah, and I would actually like to go into Turkey's interest and connections with the Crimean Tatars a little later. But there was one thing I'd like to bring up from that meeting between Erdogan and Zelensky was the statements that were delivered, because it was pretty obvious that President Erdogan was trying to walk something of a fine line between Ukraine and Russia without being seen as slanted towards one more than the other. Of course, because he spoke to Putin one day right before Zelensky arrived in Istanbul, and then this one stood out to me, that he mentioned a return specifically to the Minsk formula for the Donbass region, and I don't recall at least Erdogan ever really mentioning any specifics or even really commenting on the Donbass itself compared to the situation in Crimea, or of course, as you mentioned, the Black Sea. So do you think that for Erdogan's perspective, or Turkey for that matter, they're still trying to maintain at least like this ability to grow the relationship with Ukraine, but at the same time showcase to Russia that they're not trying to position themselves as against them per se?
Yes, sure. Because, well, actually, Turkey is not interested in confronting Russia in Ukraine, because they don't have resources for that, and they actually don't want to be too involved in that conflict, which they don't see as
Doesn't have the same resonance for them in the same way as, say, you mentioned Nagorno-Karabakh and supporting Azerbaijan, of course, that naturally, I imagine, that inspired much more of a, fulsome Turkish response, maybe in the same way that Russia might perceive any increased Turkish involvement in Ukraine.
Well, Nagorno-Karabakh is more natural, than Donbass, because Turkey has always been historically, one of the key countries to influence South Caucasus. So it was no surprise that they actually supported Azerbaijan, and as a result of the war in Nagorno-Karabakh, they managed to increase their influence not only in the sub-region particularly, but also on Azerbaijan itself, because actually Turkish military officers were deeply involved in planning all the military combat operations against Armenians, and they also managed to participate, to become one of the key stakeholders of Nagorno-Karabakh peace settlement, because earlier they were only on, they weren't this very important country in deciding in the peace process, because the political process was confined to Minsk group, which was consisted of Russia, France, the United States as the co-chairs, and that's all actually. Now it is only Turkey and Russia, the two countries that actually that has become key stakeholders of South Caucasus regional developments. In Donbass, the situation is different because it is not the region which Turkey is interested in. And also, they don't have any historical, cultural, religious ties to Donbass region. Eastern Ukraine has always been perceived as Russian zone of interest, and there were many ethnic Russians, moving to Donbass during Soviet times. So that's why Turkey actually sees Donbass only as a test field. So if there will, if something happens and there will be, a new round of escalation, Turkey may see it as an opportunity for their armed forces to demonstrate themselves. That's why, but on the other hand, they really don't want to confront Russia. They don't want to make Russia think that they're interested in supporting Ukraine or trying to finance or help in Ukraine technologically to win the war. That's why I think that's why they are very careful in solding, like high tech weaponry to Ukraine. That's why they sold the first batch of drones, which still hasn't been used. We don't know about that. So because last Ukrainian statements from Ukrainian officials were about the Bayraktar drones still being used for like training only. So we don't know if they will be used in Donbass. I don't think so. And I don't think so also because because of some, I think there are some concerns from Turkey, and Ukraine knows about it, that they don't want to provoke Russia, because Russia also can, create some problems for Turkey in the Middle East, in North Africa, and they know it. So I think I think that's Turkey is more, if Turkey is more interested in other regions. Like if you're talking about Ukraine, then it's more natural for Turkey to be interested in southern Ukraine, in the Crimean Peninsula, and in southwestern Ukraine, near Moldova and Romania, for example, because these really are regions which were historically very important to Turkey. The Ottoman Empire, which once dominated the region, and even the Black Sea, they were very powerful, and in southern Ukraine, especially when they were allies of the Crimean Khanate, of the Crimean Tatars, when they had their own state on the peninsula. And they influenced southern Ukraine very much. And once they even were allies with Ukrainian leaders when they against Poland and against Moscow. So with Ukrainian Cossacks mainly. So this is the region where they have interest, and they actually do it. So, for example, Turkey is very interested in Ukrainian housing market, and they have several huge projects in building housing, mainly for Crimean Tatars, but also for other people, also for refugees from Donbass. Actually, they build houses for them in southern Ukraine, in Kherson region, for example, near Crimea, and all the infrastructure projects in which Turkish companies are involved in, roads, ports. They are in southern Ukraine. This is like near Odessa, the Black Sea, Ukrainian Black Sea ports, Kherson, Odessa region, and border region near Moldova. And Turkey has also increased their influence over Moldova during the last several years. This is a region which is not far from Ukraine. So what they do, they are trying to gain influence in a historically important region, which they see as part of their, let's say, expanded periphery, geopolitical periphery, which Crimean Peninsula is part of, but Donbass, no.
Mhm. Well, there's some aspects of the relationship between Turkey and Ukraine that go back at least before the Maidan Revolution. For example, a more immediate one that comes to mind is the free trade agreement that President Erdogan have spoken about, and their emissaries have communicated about it. Always pops up in the press releases right after these meetings. And from what I understand, these discussions have existed since at least like 2010, 2011, about securing at least that one. But it does seem that at least under President Zelensky's tenure, that the relationship has seemingly intensified into more of this military realm that gets a lot of the attention. And if I remember correctly, even in one of Ukraine's strategic documents for foreign affairs, Turkey was listed as a strategic partner, and that was something of a first recently. But is this an initiative of President Zelensky to seek these closer relationships with Turkey, or was this or is this part of a longer trend?
It started not with Zelensky, but with Petro Poroshenko, our former president. He managed to maintain quite a good personal relationship with Erdogan, and I think they still speak with each other occasionally. And he was the first who tried and succeeded in developing strong relations with Turkey. I think so Zelensky inherited this kind of policy, and I admit he did good to maintain our dynamic relations, and even he managed to expand the cooperation in military and agricultural spheres. So these are the two key sectors that we're trying to develop right now with Turkey. Others, you can say that there are plenty of work to do. I think there were several reasons for that, and why Turkey still remains one of the key partners of Ukraine on our southern, let's say, in the south. Because actually, if you analyze Ukraine's relations with the Middle East as a whole, they are not that good, because we don't trade very much with the Middle East. We don't invest. They don't invest. We don't have huge infrastructure infrastructure projects or joint, for example, joint production of anything. So this is a big problem. But Turkey is okay. I think it's because, first of all, it's the only country. It's our neighbor, and secondly, Turkey is Ukraine's partner in the Black Sea, and we have mutual interest in maintaining security and peace in the Black Sea and defending the trade routes that are equally important both for Ukraine, because our ports, both for Turkey, let's say firstly, because this is like one of their lifelines in terms of sea trade, and for Ukraine, because with our Azov ports being blocked by Russia because they annexed Crimea and are trying to block the Azov Sea, Black Sea ports are the only ones that are remaining for sea trade, and many Ukrainian products that are going to Middle East and Turkey. These are let's see. These are mainly wheat and agricultural products. Which this is the main. We are one of the biggest players in the world markets of wheat, and mainly we export wheat to the Middle East, to Turkey, to Qatar, to Tunisia, Lebanon, through sea, through the Black Sea, through the Bosporus, and then in the to the Eastern Mediterranean. So that's why we have this mutual interest. Thirdly, I think it is because, again, Turkey proved to be the most successful country, in our foreign policy, with which Ukraine actually managed to build up some relationship and even increase it. So, because today you really can't say that Turkey is a success story, because really we have $5 billion trade volume, bilateral trade volume in, I think, 2020, and the aim is to increase it to 10 billion in the next 5 years. Turkey has become one of the top investors in Ukrainian economy, reaching at $500 million again last year. In 2020 as well, Turkey became one of the top popular tourist destination for Ukrainian citizens. And we have this we have the real tangible military projects, joint military projects, though not so many, only two, and both of them are related to drone manufacturing. Ukraine produces engines for Turkish armed drones, Bayraktar, and the new model Akinci, which is due to be released, I think, this year or next year, if I'm not mistaken. So this, I think, so basically, Turkey-Ukraine relations are good because, well, they happen to be good. Because if you compare with relations with other countries, they're not so good, and you don't have this kind. You can't say anything about them. Yeah. So that's why I think we managed to do this, and also Turkey is a huge market. That's why it's more interested to Ukraine, and it's closer. It's more interested to Ukraine than other countries, because again, you need to understand that Ukrainian economy is it's simple. So it's not complex, if you understand what I mean. We don't because more than 50% of our export are raw materials. So unfortunately, Ukraine does not produce like high technological goods, and that's why our simple economy, even, I think it cannot compete on more difficult markets, on European, for example, or American, or in for example Emirati or Saudi, where they have plenty of countries that are trying to flood the market with their goods. Ukraine cannot do that. That's why we're trying to build up relationship with countries that are interested in our simple raw products, and Turkey is one of them. But again, I need to say that despite all of this, Turkey-Ukraine relations have always been, and I think will be, unequal, because Turkey's economy is far more developed and difficult than Ukraine's, and Turkey's market is bigger than Ukraine's, and Turkey, with their aggressive, but nationalistic policy as well as in national economy, they are becoming more self-sufficient, and that's why I think that the more Ukraine-Turkey political relations are developing, the less equal our relations will become in economic and trade terms, because this is one of the unfortunate trends that I see in Turkey-Ukraine relations, that even though we managed to develop some projects with Turkey in the military sphere, in political communication is good, in terms of humanitarian assistance to Crimean Tatars, in terms even of infrastructure projects in southern Ukraine. But we can't. We are, step by step, we are going to we're going to a situation where Turkey would eventually become more powerful, yeah, and we will become, more dependent on Turkey, and that's an unfortunate trend. But that's, again, that has to do with our own internal problems, with the problems where we can't do reforms. You can't make your national economy more difficult. That's why I think Turkey-Ukraine relations will remain unequal. So they will not, because it's like the two countries, you can't compare them at all.
Well, this is the part where I would like to actually pivot back to the Crimean Tatars, which came up a few times so far in our conversation, and it's one that I'm also particularly interested in learning a bit more about here. Namely, how does Turkey? Of course, Turkey has a lot of historical connections that you touched on with the Crimean Tatars and Crimea and southern Ukraine throughout like the Ottoman Empire through into the present. But how does Turkey's connections to the Crimean Tatars really fit into this growing relationship with Ukraine? Because around the same time as the crisis in the Donbass last month, I saw that there was an announcement that Turkey was going to begin constructing housing for Crimean Tatars in Ukraine proper. And of course, a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly, after a meeting between Erdogan and Putin, Erdogan came home with two political representatives from the Crimean Tatar community, and Turkey is a supporter of the Crimean platform. So, what is? Can you describe for me this dynamic of where the connection between Turkey and the Crimean Tatars fit into the overall relationship with Ukraine?
Well, this is quite a difficult question, because really, on the one side, you have that Turkey's close ties with Crimean Tatars are natural and historical. It's like, everyone knows about them. And on the other hand, it really doesn't fit in Ukraine's grand national strategy. Let's say that, because there is no unified perception of that in Ukraine. So some people think that Turkey's relations with Crimean Tatar are good, and Ukraine should exploit them in its own interest, because, actually, we need someone to help Crimean Tatars and to maintain this, as they think, political pressure on Russia, because of Crimean Tatars, because of their rights be abused constantly in the occupied Crimea. But on the other hand, there are other people who think that although this relationship is, it's good, it doesn't tend to be like dangerous for Ukraine or anything, but still it has everything to do with Turkish interests. And some Ukrainian analysts point out that in a strategic perspective, Turkey is trying to build a kind of is trying to form a political force, a pro-Turkish political force among Crimean Tatar community, and in doing so, they actually they are trying to influence Ukrainian politics in future, in some time in future. Maybe even create a political party which will represent Crimean Tatars and will try to be elected to the parliament. Maybe, for example, they are now pushing. One of the reasons why people think so, and I also think so, that for example, now the Crimean Tatars are pushing their main project. They want the Ukrainian government to make amendments to the constitution to grant them an autonomy, cultural and political autonomy in southern regions and in Crimea. But you have Crimea is occupied, then that it will be in southern regions where they now live. Many of them who have, especially those who fled Crimea after 2014. So, and this is really this can be perceived as a potential threat in a strategic perspective, because the problem with the Turkey's relations with Crimean Tatars is not that they help them. Well, that's okay, they help them. The problem is that when Poroshenko was president, he promised to help Crimean Tatars, and that's why part of them and their leadership supported him during the elections in 2014. But then the Ukrainian government really failed to formulate a robust, unified, and policy towards Crimean Tatars. They lost contact with them. They didn't manage to organize and coordinate humanitarian assistance to them. They didn't manage to help them with housing. They didn't manage to build up some kind of a solidarity, unified Ukrainian Crimean Tatar campaign on the Crimean issue. And well, many analysts in Ukraine point out, and I tend to agree with them, that really in the period during 2015 to 2018, actually Ukraine failed to build political and cultural communication with Crimean Tatar community. That's why the community felt itself to be abandoned, at least part of it. And that's why they during these years, they tended to believe more to Turkey. They reverted to Turkey for help, and Ankara was eager and willing to help them because, again, this is in their own interest. And I think when Zelensky came to power, when he became president, he inherited this situation. The Crimean Tatars were already, at least part of them, were already lost to Turkey. And today, the Crimean Tatar community is split between those who are betting everything on Turkey, and they think that there will be no country except Turkey that will help them, and they argue that Crimean Tatars don't need to bet on Ukraine, so they actually don't need to they need to maintain their own position, and Turkey is their main foreign ally. And the others who say that, well, we'll still live in Ukraine, we still need to cooperate with the Ukrainian government, we can't build up a separate relationship with a foreign country because it could be seen toxic and it could poison relationship in the future. So, and this is really a hard issue, because now, for example, with this issue of autonomy being pushed in the political in the parliament by Crimean Tatar deputies, which were elected last year. This in 2019, sorry, not last year. This really has become a very debatable political issue in Ukraine. Like, should Ukraine give Crimean Tatars their autonomy? Is the autonomy that actually exists in Crimea isn't enough? Or should Ukraine allow Turkey so much freeway, around Crimean Tatar community? Should Turkey coordinate their humanitarian and other assistance to Crimean Tatars? Because many, and I also think that they should, because really now the majority of the projects which are aiming at assisting Crimean Tatar community, housing projects, humanitarian assistance, like cultural cooperation, everything, it goes.
It all.
It doesn't fit in Ukraine's state programs, so it just goes beyond.
It's like an autopilot, basically, where it sounds like measures are being initiated, whether it's by Turkey or away from basically the Ukrainian government, and as you said, there's no coordination on it whatsoever, and it's creating a like a politically I don't think volatile is necessarily the word that I would use, but it's creating a political vacuum that the Ukrainian government doesn't seem to be filling, is my understanding, what based on what you're
Yes,
saying.
yes, exactly. Ukrainian government is, on the one hand, they are happy it's going on because they don't need to be responsible for that kind of, for
Resource
Crimean
investment.
Tatars. Yeah, and on the other hand, they understand that there is kind of, well, it could create problems in future, but still, no decisions have been taken yet on that in that regard, because I think many in Ukrainian government, they just think in categories, in election categories. They just think that
Very short term.
maybe if there is a problem and we can't solve it, or we don't have to solve, we don't want to solve it, maybe it's better to just, like give it away to someone else. And since Turkey is seen by many in the Ukrainian government as a sincere ally, this is, I think, also another a huge problem and delusion with Ukrainian officials, that they see it as a sincere ally which will stand with Ukraine no matter what happens. They think that, okay, there is nothing bad in that. Well, let them have their own game with Crimean Tatars. Yeah, so this is this kind of relationship. It isn't bad right now. So right now, I think Ukrainian interests are interconnected with Turkey's in terms of Crimean Tatar community. But in future, it could create huge problems when it comes to deciding where is the place of Crimean Tatars in Ukraine, and should they be with Ukraine, and especially if the time will come when Crimea is back to Ukraine. I think this issue with Turkey and Crimean Tatars and autonomy will rise again, and we will have this kind of problem when they will
Big
decide,
conversation.
well, yeah, actually, should you Crimean Tatars maybe live on their own, without Ukrainian government presence and all this stuff.
Mhm. Well, there's one more question I would like to ask you through all of this, and this one is related to, again, the sort of triangle now that we've been talking about between Turkey, Ukraine, and Russia. And we did see how we talked about how Russia at least tried to rhetorically pressure Turkey over its support for Ukraine, and then they announced some measures, whether it was whether they actually enacted that travel ban to punish Turkey um, supporting Ukraine, or of course there was another announcement in April from one of the Russian deputy prime ministers that they were going to be scrutinizing defense cooperation with Turkey. But at the same time, Russia does experience some losses, like for example the travel ban, and they haven't really seemed to be able to change the dial so much away from Turkey and Ukraine growing closer in some of these spheres, particularly like in the defense and military realm. Are these signs to you that Russia's ability to really alter the trajectory of Turkey's relationship with Ukraine is actually quite limited, and it probably won't be able to stop it from deepening further?
No, I think well, I think they can do it, but they can't alter the relationship by pressuring Turkey directly. This could be hard, but they may do this by pressuring Ukraine, for which they have enough instruments. I mean, they don't need to talk to Erdogan directly to say, like, you can't have a relationship with Ukraine. They will just create problems in Ukraine. They will destabilize the situation, to the level that Turkey and other countries will just they will not want to have some meaningful, some deep relationship, or, for example, huge projects, or launch huge projects in Ukraine, or invest in Ukraine too much, because when you have a country which is at war, it's always an investment risk, and business is not very willing to go to that country. They will grab their money and go to another one which is more safer, and without all this. So I think they will just pressure Ukraine if any need arises. But right now, I can say that they are very much concerned about Ukraine-Turkey relationship. Russians understand that their geostrategic value for Turkey is much higher than Ukraine's. And that's true. Because really, if you see a Russia-Turkey relationship, it is, well, it is hard. It is very, it has a twofold effect. They like on one hand, they're partners, then they are foes, and all these things. They have
competitive, as I call it.
They are, yes, they are competitors, but on the other, but still, they have plenty of spheres where they cooperate very much, and starting from beginning from tourists. That's why after the travel ban, Turkey's officials are started to try to make this infection cases per day to decrease them immediately, and they did that. Like I think it has been 2 weeks since they imposed the curfew, and now they're talking about reopening
in 2 days.
Air flights from Russia, because they're interested in tourists. They understand that it's huge money. So beginning with tourists and ending with regional cooperation, which Ukraine does not have with Turkey. This is Russia's advantage, that they have plenty of issues where they are deeply intertwined with Turkey's interests and involved in together with Turkey. Syria, Libya, Iraq, Lebanon. Now you see with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict again burning again. You again see that Erdogan said that they have some kind of a solidarity, united position with Moscow on Israeli-Palestinian issue. So they are trying to maintain balance. They have this kind of strong mutual understanding. I would call it that. I can't call it partnership, or they're not allies, but they have this kind of understanding. They have the understanding of their red lines. They have the understanding of the necessity to work together against their rivals, because they have common rivals, like the United States, for example. And they understand that it's better to cooperate in order to divide the sphere of influence together than confront each other, and it will be exploited only by third parties like the United States or China or the European countries, France, Germany, Italy, and so on. So this is what Ukraine does not have in relations with Turkey, because Ukraine is weak on international arena. We're not players to Middle Eastern policy. We're not players in North Africa. We have practically nothing in South Caucasus. So we didn't manage to play any role in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and we couldn't. And that's why in this case, Ukraine loses to Russia. And while that remains so, I don't think Russia will be bothered very much by Turkey-Ukraine's relationship.
Ilya, this was a great conversation, and this is again a topic that is very, very interesting to me, and one that I continue to personally want to pursue more. So, down the line, when something new happens in this relationship, I would be very happy to have you right back here on Turkey Abroad to go right into it.
Thank you. I would be glad to help and to speak again, because really this is one of the topics that is rarely actually discussed, even in Ukraine. There's not so many people are talking about Turkey and the Middle East, and I would be very glad. Thanks.
Well, I look forward to providing that platform in any case.
Thank you very much.
My name is Nicholas Morgan, and this is Turkey Abroad.